Alan, what some juicy news here at the Fire Pit Collective that I'm looking forward to getting into. Geoff Ogilvy is the heart of the subject matter here. Hard to believe that, I can actually say to you in this situation that we are partnering with Geoff Ogilvy at the Fire Pit Collective, not only as an investor, but as a content creator. That just seems surreal to me.
Yeah, it's a monumental day for us. It really is. I mean, when you think about the best voices in the game, as far as insight and authenticity and passion and just unorthodox thinking and creativity, like he's top 3 in the world. He's top 2. Geoff has always been such a great voice in the game, and he was just dabbling. He was always everyone's favorite podcast guest or guest columnist, or he was one of my go-to guys when I was doing a long form story. Just go chat him up, and he kind of filled that role for a lot of people, and he finally has a home, and it's incredible that it's firepitcollective.com. I mean, this is going to be the launching pad for all kinds of great stuff, and that we get to have a supporting role is just phenomenal.
To add to that list of attributes, like intellect and thoughtfulness, that's what I've always been so appreciative of, is when you ask him something on any subject matter relating to the game of golf and or life, it's just got so much thought behind it. It's so compelling and articulate and informative, and in some cases inspiring. I leaned on him a lot for thoughts on architecture and insight into architecture over the years, and had him as a guest in Design Week on Morning Drive, and just every time you walk away, you're smarter, you're better for it, for time spent listening and learning from Geoff Ogilvy. So the idea that at some point when I was explaining the concept of what we were doing as a business and building verticals and platforms for content creators, and I sort of got to the end of my pitch, and like he does, he's an incredible listener too. He said, "I'm 1,000% in," and I was like, 1,000%? Like, that's a big percentage. Like that, if we can get 1,000% from Geoff Ogilvy, like that is a really powerful statement.
We were hoping for like 80%. We would have taken 80.
I would take 8. I would take 8. 1,000.
Yeah, I know. Well, and one of those conversations that we were on together, I remember saying to him, like, every jabroni in the world has a platform now to spew about golf, except for the guy we really need to hear from. Like, it's time, Geoff. Like, you almost have an obligation at this point. Like you need your own podcast talking about the game every week of every year in perpetuity. And one of the things when he really kind of lit up, if you remember us talking about the top 100 list, I said, there's a million top 100 lists, and they're all flawed and compromised in their own ways. I said, if Geoff Ogilvy gives you the top 100 golf courses in the world, that's it. That's the only list you need, right? I mean,
it's certainly a list that I would carry around in my wallet for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to tattoo that on
pictures
on
of my kids.
yeah. So, sorry, Brandon, we gotta swap this one out. But like, right? I mean, he's just authentic, and it's not a bought and sold thing of paid advertisers. It's not because the owner of the company wants him to build a golf course. Like, if Geoff Ogilvy says this is the best golf course in the world, then I believe him. Like, what more do you need? And you can go on down the line. So he's one thing you mentioned, I mean, he's so curious. Like, he's just curious about the world around him and about the game. And he and I talked yesterday for almost an hour, and we got into all these digressions about Seve Ballesteros' hometown, and about Billy Casper putting in the dark so we could just groove the feel and the sound, and and you wind up, he asked you as many questions as you ask him, which is always, I think, revealing, especially when you're talking about a superstar athlete. That you tend to exist in their own little hermetically sealed bubble, but Geoff's always been a guy who busted out of that and wanted to see and experience more. And so, I mean, I've said this before, but I think, for us, he's going to be the Anthony Bourdain of golf travel. Like, let's just send Geoff around the world with a camera crew and a carry bag and see what happens. Like, how much fun is that going to be?
It's travel, it's architecture, it's insight into the professional game. It's also insight into what he's trying to do and to grow the game, which he's incredibly passionate about. He has kids, the game and the health and sustainability of the game matters to him. For him to essentially lead Fire Pit Collective down under, Australia version, and then to see where it all goes and how it gets there, to me, is going to be one of the most exciting and inspiring aspects of what we're trying to create here in this modern media network, in which we're surrounding ourselves with thoughtful and smart people. So I know we're going to get to your conversation with him. We're going to be able to read your story that you're going to write about him, which I'm excited for. Give us a couple, in addition to what you've already mentioned, give us a couple of top level sort of subject matters that you guys touch upon and what's coming up in this interview.
Yeah, well, so part of the timing of this announcement is, Geoff and Michael Clayton and others down in Australia have cooked up what I think is the coolest golf tournament on the planet, the Sandbelt Invitational, and begins on Monday morning in Australia. And they're playing Kingston Heath, Royal Melbourne, Yarra Yarra, and Peninsula Kingwood, just 4 spectacular venues, 1 round at each, 72 holes. There's male and female pros, and there's male and female top level amateurs. And so there's going to be 4 winners, but then at the same time, there's a macro leaderboard. They're all competing against each other. They're going to set up the tees. So, essentially the women have more or less the same clubs into the greens as the men. And it's going to be, it's a pretty audacious idea. And it, as you said, this all stems from Geoff's desire to give back. His foundation is supplying the purse. He's kind of made all the phone calls and brought this thing to life. And it's just such a cool idea. The golf courses will be the star, especially this first year, because of COVID, because of quarantines. It's pretty much all the golfers who were trapped in Australia and haven't had anywhere to play. And, Melbourne's probably been the most locked down city in the world, or one of them. And they've lost so much golf. And, the Australian Open's been now canceled 2 years in a row. That's one of the great old championships in the game. And so Geoff just looked around and said, we need somewhere to play. We need something to be inspired by. Let's give something to the fans. And so this tournament just got cooked up. And, I was joking. It's like, he's like Bobby Jones in March of 1934. I mean, this is like the Augusta National, Spring Invitational, essentially. And there's even the shared DNA with Alistair McKenzie designed Royal Melbourne West. And so, and he had a hand in some of the great greens at Kingston Heath. And so it's really going to be a great event. And it's a little bit of, Geoff's so low key about everything. He doesn't want the spotlight, but it's a little celebration of his place in the game. And all of this, he's now 43, and he doesn't want to grind week in, week out in tournament golf. And I think he's looking for a slightly different role. And so being a force in the game in other ways has always appealed to him. And now he's at the point in his life where he's ready to take that step. And I think that's where the collective comes in. He's now going to be a media mogul. He's going to be a tournament director, and who knows what other hats he's going to wear. And it's just exciting to see. And it was fun to get into some of the granular details in this podcast that I did with him.
We've always both worn Link Soul. We've always shared the love and admiration and respect for John Ashworth. And now the idea that we're wearing literally the same uniform in addition to the same clothing line is just amazing. So I can't wait to hear again more about what you write and what you guys talk about. So I think without further ado, I think we get to it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Geoff. Good morning over there in Australia.
Good morning. Yeah, 7:30 in the morning.
You're quite perky. I love it. So let's talk about the Sandbelt Invitational. I mean, I want to hear the whole genesis for this very unique idea. We're all excited about it. I know you've been working on it for quite a long time, but just lay out kind of how this came to be.
It's funny. It's been talked about sort of around the traps in Melbourne a lot, actually. I mean, when I grew up, we had 8 or 9 or 10 tournaments in Australia, sort of starting in November and ending in sort of March, really. And Greg used to come back through the 80s. He'd play 6 or 7 of them. I mean, they were really big tournaments, I mean, we had at Royal Melbourne one year in 1988, I mean, we had Nicholas and Freddie Couples and Sluman and Payne Stewart. Everybody came, right? And I just grew up just thinking the Sandbelt was about golf tournaments. It's just because of what I grew up with. And then they kind of disappeared. And from, I don't know, I mean, there's I guess a combination of a lot of factors of economy, and the PGA Tour sort of back then was playing for $1 million a week, and now they're playing for $9 million a week now. And the world sort of changed, and we couldn't attract players, and we just eroded away the tournaments in Melbourne, really. So anyway, through the pandemic and stuff, we've been hearing all these sort of rumours. The Australian Open got cancelled in 2020, and then we've been hearing all these rumours that it was going to get cancelled again in 2021, and we were kind of disappointed. And we've been trying to sort of I started a foundation with a bunch of friends, and just trying to get the elite, like the junior golfers, the up and coming amateur golfers, boys and girls, to sort of in the mix with the pros, to play and practice a little bit and get together. And we'd been doing that a little bit weekly, just one round stuff. And we thought, wouldn't it be good if we could have a 4-rounder of these? Just let's get everyone together, have a 4-rounder, and sort of have an end of the year sort of game with everybody. And we thought, well, why don't we call the Sandbelt courses and see if we can do that? That'd be really cool. We had this dream of Royal Melbourne and Kingston Heath and all that, and made a few calls. It's been funny here because in Melbourne, we were without golf for 3 or 4 months this year and last year. The golf courses were closed due to the pandemic. So we were very conscious of calling these clubs and saying, hey, can we have your course for 4 days? But we thought if we called 4 different ones and said, look, can we just have sort of half a day for our tournament? Would you let us on? And they were all pretty excited because we had a good relationship with them all. And they said, that sounds pretty good. And it just grew from there. Everyone loved the idea. All of a sudden they said, no, you can have the course for the whole day. We'll set it up like a proper tournament. A few sponsors sort of came along. And when we got it on the news and made a bit of an announcement, just the local Melbourne news, and it sort of went around the world, and we had text messages and emails from everyone around the world saying, what's this new tournament, the Sandbelt? I want to come. Can I come? Can't come this year, but are you going to keep doing it? So yeah, just sort of one of those great serendipitous sort of moments. It's like, well, let's just call a couple of clubs and see if we can get something organised. And it sort of, the ball got rolling. It's been fun.
Well, in 1934, Bobby Jones had a persnickety Wall Street guy named Cliff Roberts to handle all the details, but you're filling both roles. I mean, how much has this taken over your life, and how granular are you when it comes to sorting out all the tidbits of this tournament?
I think I've been a little bit sensible in that. I was there for a lot of the intros with some of the important people, but we've got a lot of people around here have put their hand up. People who have been sort of around golf and inside golf for 20 or 30 or 40 years, some of them. We've got the head rules official from Australia for the last 20 or 30, like the Slugger White of Australia, Trevor Herden. He's been all around the world. He sort of put his hand up to help the rules side of things. We've got Kathy Shearer, who's sort of been the boss of the media circus for the last, I don't know how long. Wife of a tour player, Bob Shearer, Kathy. She's just the sort of the boss of the media, so she's controlling all the media. We've now got a social media expert, and we've got a couple of people who sort of know how to talk to the government to get some funding, and people liaising with the golf clubs and stuff. So it's become quite big. So I sort of pushed the ball, pushed the rock off the hill, but it's rolling on its own now.
I love that. Well, golf fans know Royal Melbourne, of course, and a lot of folks are aware that Kingston Heath is one of the 20 or 30 greatest courses in the world. But tell us about the 2 other venues, because they're a little under the radar, but in their own way, just as special.
Yeah, the other 2, Yarra Yarra is right next door to Kingston Heath, pretty much 2 miles away from each other. They're pretty close. The Sandbelt are all quiet. They're all within a sort of 10 square miles or something, generally. It's pretty close. It's a bit of a smaller place. It's been around the same time. They all sort of, Melbourne, the history is, as Melbourne expanded in the 20s and 30s, all these golf clubs, they had golf clubs close to downtown, as it used to happen, because it was a small town back then. And as industry sort of pushed everyone out, the land got too expensive. They all moved out, and amazingly enough, they all found this big patch of sand sort of 20 minutes away south of the city. And they all sort of moved out in the 20s and the 30s. So Yarra Yarra's the same, sort of a small property, a bit more like a Riviera feeling property in that it's small, not expansive. Royal Melbourne's massive. It just feels big scale and stuff. Yarra Yarra's a bit smaller, surrounded by houses, but amazing greens, incredible greens up to the level of all the sandbelts. A couple of amazing par threes that have often been sort of talked about as the best hole in Australia. I mean, the 11th hole at Yarra Yarra when I was a kid was supposed to be the best hole in Australia. Like, it was just an incredible hole. So it's got a lot of sort of pedigree. Yarra Yarra has sort of been off the radar for a long time, but it used to hold some really important golf tournaments back in the 70s and 80s. A lot of the best players have played there. I know Snead and Nicholas and Trevino and that have been to Yarra Yarra. So it's a pretty historic club, and one of the ones that sort of, it's a bit like Quaker Ridge sitting next to Wingfoot, you know what I mean? It's like just as good, but it doesn't really get the fame that Wingfoot does, Pretty similar situation to that. And Peninsula Kingswood is, I think anyone who's follows any of the architecture Instagrams or sort of websites has probably seen that. It's very, very photogenic. It's it's actually about 15 minutes down the road. It was a 36-hole property that merged with another club. They started talking about 10 years ago, and it sort of happened about 5 years ago. They merged. So one of the clubs, Kingswood Golf Club, closed and sold their land for real estate. And they made about 120 million with that deal.
Wow.
But now the members were without a golf club. So they merged with Peninsula, which was 15 minutes down the road, and took their 120 million and says, take our members and spend this money. It's like just a dream situation. Like, can you absorb this 300 or 400 people? But like, we want this place to be like the best. So they dropped a lot of money. We redid both golf courses with no stone unturned budget. You know what I mean? It started off, let's just build new greens. But once the hood's up, like once it's open, well, you might as well, let's get rid of this tree and why don't you put a bunker over here? And it ended up just being a sort of wall to wall sort of renovation of Peninsula. And it wasn't really, a lot of the work on the Sandbelt, those sort of things are restoration work because of the sort of the history and the Mackenzie stuff and the Morecambe stuff. It's like, well, we want to bring it back to what it was. Peninsula didn't really have that history, so it was like open slather to do whatever you want. And Michael Cocking, the genius that he is, it just turned out just amazing. So anyway, that's a 36-hole property that's sort of similar in scale to Royal Melbourne. It's really big, but it's 15, 20 minutes down the road, and it's just in immaculate conditioning. And as I said, it's a very photogenic place. When you stand on the first tee, you just want to play golf there. It's a great place.
The competition 18 holes, is that a composite, or which of the two courses will be used for the Invitational?
We're just using the North course this year. They've got aspirations to use a sort of a composite sort of course to sort of showcase both sides. And you would stay kind of nearer the clubhouse, because one's on one side of the clubhouse and one's on the other side of the clubhouse. So they do have some plans, and Michael, I know, has given them a few different alternatives for composites, but we're just playing the North course this year, which is the one that it gets ranked a bit higher, and it's just a little bit trickier and a bit more dramatic. And maybe in the future a composite course there. But we'll just stick to the North. That's the one everyone really loves the most, I think.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I have seen all those Instagrams, all those photos. I can't wait to go see that golf course. It looks, as you say, it's so inviting. You just want to hit those shots. Sometimes you see the holes, like when you see a second hole at Pine Valley, like that might be too hard for me. I don't know if I can play that hole. But Peninsula Kingwood, it just like you just can't wait to hit those shots. So.
There's a lot of great golf courses. I mean, but just some, just for whatever reason, when you get above them in these drones, they just look miraculous. And Peninsula and Royal Melbourne too happen to be two of them. Whereas you put it over Riviera or something, it's like, oh yeah, that's all right. But Riviera or something like that is about playing, right? And you kind of work out the genius after you've been there for a little bit, because at first it's probably a little underwhelming relative to a Pine Valley or a Cypress Point or a Royal Melbourne. But Peninsula's got all that. It's got that. You drive in the front gate and you're just like, wow, where's the first tee? Let's go. I want to play now. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just got that look.
That's cool. Now let's get into the format of the Sandbelt Invitational, because it's pretty unique. How did you settle? Well, first of all, explain to the listeners who may have not been paying close attention to how this tournament's going to play out, and how did you settle on that?
Well, we are basically this year again because of the sort of the genesis of the tournament. We were just sort of trying to beg for a little bit of room on these golf courses at the start. We sort of settled on a smallish field of mid-60s that we could play in one draw. Not 2 draws for the day, just 1 draw for the day. So we're mid-60s, and it's really sort of basically trying to be half pros, half amateurs. And of those pros, half men and half women, and of the amateurs, half men and half women. So it's trying to be sort of open for all at this point, the best of each sort of group. The nature of everything, there's a few more there's more men than women because there's just way more depth, and we don't have the amount of women. And our best women golfers, Hannah Green, Minjee Lee, Steph Kirikou, they can't get back here because of the pandemic, and they're staying overseas and all that. So we're a little slightly man heavy, but that's okay. It's less about the equality in that, and it's about let's just get the best 60 players we can who are in Australia right now to come play, really, out of those sort of categories. So it's really about giving the pros like somewhere to play because they haven't had anywhere to play this year, and it's about exposing these kids to like a proper tournament with leaderboards and caddies and media obligations at the end of the round, and playing with pros and working out through lines and all the weird stuff that pros do, and the etiquettes and stuff involved in pro golfers, and just be out there and just see where the level's at and see if you can hang and go away and work on it and come back, if you know what I mean. So in the future I think we'd have a bigger field, so you could just have more scale to have more people, and you'd probably end up with more pros and amateurs because you just have more of them, but it's the real spirit of this is to get guys and girls together, the elite young like wannabes, if you want, away, the ones who are on their way there, to come play with the guys who have already made it, or the players that have already made it, and sort of, can you hang with us? Like, if you want to come up the stretch, if you go and beat Lucas Herbert up the stretch as a young 19-year-old, and we've got a couple of kids who could win it for sure. The amateurs, what a thrill and what a feather in the cap for these guys. So they just don't have this opportunity in world golf, and we just sort of want to provide it to them, So, that's the field. It's a different makeup from most tournaments for sure.
And to be clear, there's going to be 4 winners for a male amateur, female amateur, a male pro, and a female pro. But then you're talking about there's also going to be sort of a merged leaderboard in the end, right?
We're trying to have like the main thing be everyone's in the same tournament. So that's difficult for the men and women's side. The elite amateur men, they can hang with the pros, they can do it. But the women, we're doing sort of a hybrid version of tees, not the straight ladies tees, but women's tees, because that's too short for these girls. But a hybrid of those, and we're going to have the winning score of the whole field relative to par. So the men at, say, Yarra Yarra are playing a par 70, and the women are playing a par 73. But it's score relative to par, how we compete. And look, it's an impossible formula to probably get right. But we'll see. There was actually a tournament we did earlier in the year at Rosebud here, that it was the TPS, and we had men and women in the field, and we just tried to have the tees playing against each other in the same tournament, and we fixed up the tees. And Sue O, who's probably our best player in the Sandbelt, she was there at Rosebud too. She's top 50 in the world, plays LPGA. She had a chance, and she birdied the last to, I think, be 1 back on Sunday. And then Brad Kennedy ended up birding the last and beating her by 2 shots. But so she was in it. So you can do it. And the atmosphere there with Sue having a chance to win, and then a guy birding the last to beat her and stuff. At the end of 72 holes. So we got the formula kind of right. So, or they did. I didn't really have anything to do with that formula. So it could be really cool. And there's almost no other sport you could do that in. You couldn't really do it in a 100-meter race. You couldn't really do it in tennis. They've tried to do it in tennis a little bit, but it's always, golf. But you could actually really come up with a way to have men and women play in the same tournament, So we're just dipping the toe in the ocean and stuff like that and seeing how we go.
I think that's appealing about this tournament. There's kind of a freewheeling spirit to it. Like, let's just see what happens. You know, we're trying our best here. You know, and we'll figure it out as we go. Like, it's kind of charming in that way. I mean, obviously you're taking it all very seriously, but am I right about that? That there's kind of this sense of, well, we're gonna throw a little tournament and see what happens.
I think so. I mean, the celebration is more about the golf courses are the star. You know, I mean, there is so much golf played around the world where it's all about prize money and field, and Melbourne's. I mean, our asset is our golf courses. I mean, they have almost a mythical sort of spot in some people's brains about golf. You know, and when Tiger leaves the President's Cup every single time down here, and he goes, Royal Melbourne's one of my favourite places in the world. Melbourne, everybody, you got to come to play in Melbourne. It's the best. And when I design courses, I try to make them like Melbourne courses, you know. When he says things like that, and everybody who leaves, it plants an idea in everybody's head about how special the Sandbelt is. And it really is. So we're just trying to highlight that with an interesting format that it also ticks a box for sort of the development of players. And it gives, as I said, it gives these struggling Aussie pros who have been stuck here for a couple of years something to play in. And it's also, I think, the kernel of a really good idea that could evolve into something really special, I think. I mean, why wouldn't you, if you could, play a golf tournament every year at Royal Melbourne and Kingston Heath and these sort of places? I mean,
yeah,
it's
so
amazing,
cool.
yeah.
Will you be involved in pin positions and things like that?
We've had a look. The superintendents tend to be, we're advising, we're talking about the spirit. I mean, they know their course. I mean, Richard Forsyth at Royal Melbourne, he set up his course. I mean, he works with Slugger and that, with the pins for the President's Cup and all that. He knows his course as well as anybody. You can't really tell him what to do. He's going to do what he wants to do. Like most good supers, right? They sort of, that's where they're at. But if we say, look, we want the spirit of it to be not completely impossible, but like challenging enough, and you have to play Royal Melbourne properly, so give us some good pins. Yeah, so we've looked at a few of the pins that we're choosing, and I think they'll be sort of, they would call them medal pins here. So in Melbourne, every member club, the first Saturday of every month, they play club medal. You know, they have, it's, if you put your name down on Saturday, you enter the club medal. It's like once a month they give one of these away, and it's a stroke play net score, but it's the back tees tough pin. Once a month they set the course up tough, you know. So they kind of want that, you know. They want the Sunday pins at every course. So you're going to have 4 days of Sunday pins, sensible Sunday pins, you know what I mean? So it could be interesting.
I love it. I hope there's a really controversial pin, and all of a sudden everyone's yelling at you. That's going to be fun to see how you handle that.
Sit on the other side, because I've been the one yelling for 25 years, so yeah.
You know, this tournament is part of kind of a larger thing going on in your life that I want to get into. Is you seem to be in a transitional phase where you don't want to grind week in, week out as a touring professional, and obviously the architecture has been dear to your heart, and you're immersed in that, and you're becoming a little bit of a media mogul. I guess this would be the right time to mention that you've become an investor in the Fire Pit Collective. Welcome, Geoff. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
And, you know, this is going to be, you know, we're going to help to kind of whatever you want to do. We're just here in a supporting role, podcasts and writing and golf travel and anything else we can, that you can think of. And obviously it's exciting for us, but, you know, where are you in your career and your life? How would you sum up this phase you're in now, and kind of in your mid 40s? And
it's an interesting period. It's definitely not, the landscape for me sort of was changing gradually. I mean, I was all in on golf from day one. I mean, I can't remember ever doing anything else. I mean, I did a lot of stuff when I was a kid, but it was only ever going to be golf for me. I mean, from single digits, 7 or 8 or 9, you know, it was just, if I had 5 minutes, I was chipping in the backyard. I don't think I ever said no. If Dad said, I'm going to the driving range to hit balls, I'm going to go play golf, do you want to come? I don't think I ever said no. You know, I mean, it was just always what I was going to do. And then going through, and it all went really well, obviously, up through the first sort of 10 or 12 years of playing. And then we had kids. And it was still, obviously, it's great. But, I mean, as all the other guys on tour would know, once you have kids, it's like your priorities adjust a little bit. And as you start going away every Monday morning, gets less fun. You know, the golf doesn't get any less fun, but the going away Monday morning gets a little bit less fun. So it wore me out a little faster. Does that make sense? And I just really, really sort of got to a point where I want to live in Australia for a little bit. I want my kids to have that experience. I'm a little bit jaded with the playing. I was sort of take maybe sort of a gap. Hadn't been playing well for a couple of years. I'll take a little bit of a gap year. Let's sort of give the kids the Australian experience a little bit, like a lot of the European players on tour, they take for 3 months every year, they go back to, they go back to Sweden and they go back to England and they go back to sort of Spain, and they have that experience. And when they have kids, they sort of get that immersive culture, but that's very difficult to do in Australia because it's so far away. And with the kids in school and stuff. So I kind of wanted that experience for them anyway. They might all end up in 5 years' time coming back to college in the US, and it might all be different, but you know what I mean? So it was from golf wasn't involved in that decision. It was more about family and those sort of priorities. That being said, I was planning on sort of playing a part-time sort of schedule from here and getting involved in a few other things because I've always loved the media side of things. And yeah, but the pandemic came along and I couldn't really travel, and so basically I haven't really played. I've played a few things down here, but I haven't really played golf for 2 or 3 years in anger, So it's sort of the pandemic. And at 43, when you lose a couple of years, all of a sudden it's like, wow, It's like you're sort of in no man's land as a pro anyway, really, a little bit, except for those like elite guys who, like Phil, those outliers who can still do it in their mid to late 40s. So a bit of an adjustment. I still love playing golf. I still think of myself as a golfer. And I still walk around. There's golf clubs lying around my house, and I'm swinging golf clubs all the time. And I'm practicing and playing, and I'd still like to play some tournaments. But I'd like to be a consistent dad at home more, than spending 3 months sort of chasing a ball around and digging holes on a range, So, as I said, I've always loved the media side. From day one, my parents, from about my 12th or 13th birthday, maybe 13th, bought me Down the Fairway, the Bob Jones, his first autobiography that he did with OBQ. And I read that like 100 times. I've still got the copy and my parents' little note in the front. And I just fell in love with reading golf books. I started off on a good one because the Jones books are so good, the way he writes, or OB wrote. But the way he describes things is so matter of fact and such great language they used like 100 years ago. The adjectives are all different, and I just fell in love with reading golf books. So I just read them all and always went to golf tournaments, and I watched every golf tournament that was ever on TV, which was very few back then. We didn't have the YouTube or the internet. We'd have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning here to watch the Masters, and then we'd have to wait 3 months to watch the US Open at 5 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have any of the regular tour events. So I've always just soaked up that side of things. And then once I got out there and started having more media obligations, it's not about I like people hearing what I have to say, really. I just enjoy the whole story of golf. I love when somebody explains it in a really good way, and so anyway, it's just been a side that I've always enjoyed, so it seemed to make sense to sort of, I've been doing podcasts and interviews and standing in front of cameras doing shoots for Titleist and like the tour and like inside the tour and all that sort of stuff for so long, so we kind of developed the skill set a little bit along the way, don't you think, for us? I just think it's interesting. So yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. There's a lot of cool stories, I think, in golf that need to be told. Because we get dragged to media stuff, as you know. You've been one of the draggers for a long time, Like,
my bad.
No, but that's your job. And like, I always sort of never saw it as getting dragged. I always saw it as part of the obligation of being a pro, and I always interested. For whatever reason, it fascinated me. You guys' take, and I'm putting you all in a basket, but like the writers and the TV's take on what happened out there usually was so different from what I thought that I just found it interesting. And I always enjoyed, there is a lot of the print journalists especially that I could talk to for hours about golf because they look at it like I do, whereas most of the golfers don't, which is funny. You know what I mean? Most golfers are like, there's a lot of pros out there who just get given a club and a ball and say hit it, and they can, and they don't think any deeper about golf than just where's the pin, let's hit it, and that's fantastic. I wish I could be like that. And there's others who sort of take a deep dive, and you can tell that they lie in bed at night thinking about it and stuff, and they talk about sort of stuff. And I've always been more one of those guys, and I think if I'm going to be thinking and talking about it, and sort of, why not do that like on a sort of a more sort of out there scale, because I enjoy conversations about golf, and why not sort of do that,
Well, right. I mean, that thoughtfulness has always made you a favorite podcast guest and a guest columnist and a go-to interview for all of us. So I think it's cool that there's now going to be one place where it's all collected, and your fans, which are legion, know, okay, well, Geoff's going to be doing cool stuff, and now we know where to find it. So that's one of the exciting bits about this is to you've kind of been everywhere in the media universe, but without a home, and so now we can bring it all together in one place. I think will be great for those who enjoy your musings, which are many.
I think it'd be interesting too, not being everything you ever do I've ever done to this point is, hey, how about we do this? But like some of these, it can sort of be my idea a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I think,
of course,
everyone wants to show that. I think the passionate golfers, anyway, the ones who are into it, they want to show the golf that they know and have people love it as much as they do. I just want people to love golf as much as I do, if they want to. They don't have to. You know what I mean? You don't have to listen. But if you want to love golf and you want to like understand sort of why some of us get so crazy and passionate about it, I feel like there's a lot of people. There's certain people who I think can explain that to people and make it better. I mean, when you I don't know, when Jaime writes an article, you read it, and it's interesting, or like when Shackelford's ranting on about something, you kind of have a listen, whether you agree or not, you listen because it's an interesting way to talk about it. I just think the golf landscape is more interesting with people who are like that,
I agree. And there's so many voices out there. It can be hard, I think, to cut through the clutter. But I mean, something I said to you in one of our conversations was like, there's a million top 100 lists, but I think if you make your own, or you go have beers with Michael Clayton and a few of your people, and you give us the top 100 of best courses in the world, that automatically becomes a list that people are going to care about, and it's fun to debate. And there's a purity there because there's not panelists who are paying to be a part of that list. There's the owners does not have a business relationship with the guy who built the course. I mean, so I think, as the golf media has expanded and there's more voices, which I think is obviously a good thing, but it's not always clear who's on which side and who you want to devote your time and your energy to listening. But I think you've established through the years a credibility with the golf fan out there that is really important. Like they want a tour guide through this world, and you've got the sensibilities, I think, to take them to different places. So that's part of what's exciting about all this. Maybe,
I don't know. I mean, I think everybody has a different way to look at it. I think it's just a life of being passionate about one thing, and it's not most pros, a lot of pros, as I said before. Some it's just all about the hitting the shots. It's being a professional golfer, and then there's others who the whole game, and it's usually the ones who played from like young ages, like the Justin Thomases and the Tigers and that, the ones who played their whole life. Charles Howell, they're just into everything golf. The golf courses. They love the fact that they used to play with wooden shafts. Like when you go to St Andrew, we go to the old course one year. We went and we played King Garrick, I think it's called. It's about half an hour from St Andrews, and it's a hickory course. And you go there and you play like 1870 level balls and stuff. And the course is like cut like it was cut with like a horse-drawn mower thing. Like it's nuts. It's so much fun for like a little hour. Like all those little things, I just like all the 72-hole stroke play is really interesting, and like 125 mile an hour club head speeds, and that's great. And I love that side of things. But there's so much more that fascinates me about golf, So I think there's the whole lot of it. Yeah.
I mean, that tension though to still hold on to your identity as a player and as a competitor. Like take the Sandbelt Invitational. how much pressure to perform do you feel? You know, you're the host. You're obviously the only major championship winner in the field, right? Like, there's people are gonna like, wow, he's got to be the favorite, even though you're a little rusty competitively. But how do you balance the reality versus the expectations?
Yeah, I don't know. The expectations is something that I think I've struggled with forever. I think a lot of guys do. That's a tough one, expectations. It might be one of the biggest weights you can put on yourself, sort of expecting to play well. Or, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Like, I don't have crazy expectations for this week, next week. I've been playing a little bit the last couple of months, but as I said, we missed golf for 3 or 4 months this year, which is the first time in my life. It was the longest. This year, 2021, would be the least amount of rounds I've ever played in a 12-month period, I would have said. I've probably played 40 rounds in 340 days so far, you know, or whatever it is. Like, that's not very many. I mean, I would average 200 for the last 25 years, you know. So it's been different, but it's been kind of good too. I've been working on not having tournaments. I found playing tournaments every week quite difficult to work on your game properly, because when you care where the ball goes, you just have to focus on where the ball goes. And sometimes when you want to like sort of change your game a little bit, you kind of have to not worry about where the ball goes just for a little bit to sort of get the pattern in, and then sort of narrow it down. You know what I mean? If you're just hanging on and don't hit it, you can find a way to hit it straight, but like it might not be what you're trying to work on. You know what I mean? But now I've had a couple of years of no tournaments. I've been able to like play around with the golf swing a little bit and play around with some of the action and stuff, and it's been really sort of fun. Like freedom, it didn't matter how I played, and that's almost a good way to, maybe the best way to get better is have it not matter, you know, free. Like a kid down the range, he just wants to hit the ball, you know, he doesn't care if he does or not, he just wants to hit the ball, you know, more of that headspace. So it's been good. So I don't know, I mean, I might play great, but my expectation level will be pretty low, as I said, because I haven't played that much, and I'll probably have a few things running around in my head, making sure everything's going smoothly and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. There's still a fair bit of pride or ego or something there. I'm still going to want to play pretty well, and if I have a half decent round in the first round or something, and I've got a like chance to have a good week, I'm going to turn into a grumpy pro again, probably.
I love it. When the courses were closed for those long periods, was there some empty parcel of land you were sneaking off to with a shag bag? I mean, could you do anything like golf during those stretches, or were you really just at home and that had the game taken away from you?
As the game was taken away, the golf courses were closed. So there was a few guys who lived like in rural areas, sort of out in the fringes of Melbourne, that were hitting balls on their like back paddock and stuff. And Mike Clayton was, he lives near the beach, and he was walking down the beach with a golf club and a few balls every day. He was like Seve. He was hitting balls up and down the beach every day. Because you were kind of allowed to do that, but I didn't do anything. The only shots I hit in angle, I've had my TrackMan a few times set up as a thing in my net in my garage, and I would hit balls in my garage, and I got a putting mat and stuff, so it wasn't real golf, but it was kind of nice to take the break. I mean, it was we had a ruthless stretch here of, I don't even know how many days it was, but Melbourne, I think, is the most locked down city in the world, I think, over the last 2 years, and we had like 4 months where I washed them once a week, but I put the same tracksuit pants on every day. The same, like it was truly Groundhog Day. You know, wake up, get a coffee, sit in front of the computer, get the news. Now what do? You know, wait till I can order Uber Eats for lunch. You know, it was like you'd set your schedule by when you can order Uber Eats. Played some video games. Like it was an indoor life. You know, it was different, but a good experience in a way. I mean, I don't know. I'm glad for the experience, because I would never have even imagined a situation where, like, there was no traffic. Like, Melbourne's a big city. It's 4 or 5 million people now. And there's always that background hum of traffic, you know. Like, in any city, like in California, you just put your ear out the window. You can hear cars somewhere, you know. You could hear no cars. There was periods, especially at 8 o'clock, there was like curfews for late at night, like 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night. It was like you were in the bush with no one around you. It was amazing. So it was kind of cool in that aspect, you know. Never again, though, hopefully.
I was on that beach in near Padrinha where Seve would hit his shots.
No way.
I went to that village, did a big story a couple of years ago, and went to the house he grew up in, hung out with his brothers, and down to the golf club, which is like a museum of all things Seve. And it's really, I live in Carmel, which has quite a beautiful beach, and I've traveled a bit, but that beach right there called Soma is just absolutely amazing. And it has some really cool wispy dunes. I mean, you could film some outtakes and people would think you were at Royal Birkdale or something. So it's not hard to understand why he felt so at home during the Open Championship, because those kind of wispy dunes were right there. So
That's
that was
amazing.
cool. That was that was one of the more fun assignments I've had. And that what I learned on that is something like 24 pros came out of this tiny little village. Is because the king of Spain, he had a summer home across the bay, and he wanted a place to play. And so they because the land was so great in Padrinha, they bought out all these farms and they built this course for him. And so, Padrinha kind of became like the St. Andrews of Spain, just completely randomly. And so all these great players kind of paved the way for Seve.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, he built a golf course for himself, but like it actually had a knock-on effect. I love that stuff. Like that's so good. It's the best.
Oh yeah, I mean this little stone house up on the on the hill. Seve and his brothers would hit 7-irons down onto one of the greens of the course, and they'd have to scramble over the fence and pick them up. Like it was so quintessential. And but as you said, like when the game is taken away from you, you have to kind of figure out a way. So Seve would go out and play that course at night by himself. And that's where he kind of credited his feel for the game, because you just have to feel where the ball was going. You might be able to hear it. You couldn't see it. And there's some great passages in his autobiography about playing at night alone and how that developed the extraordinary feel he had. So
it's funny, Billy Casper actually talked about that in his book about his putting, because he used to sneak out to San Diego Country Club at night and putt in the dark and just putt by sound. And he credits that with becoming such a great putter. So it's interesting. It's funny, and like all we do these days, if our kid shows interest in a sport or golf, we just buy him everything. We get him a place to play, and you have the clubs, and you get a pile of balls on the range, and we'll bring you some more if you run out. Whereas Seve, they would have been fighting for any opportunity to just hit a golf shot. I mean, they're practicing golf from outside the golf course, just hitting to a green that's inside the golf course. I mean, it's almost like taking away the opportunity fuels the desire or something. Like when you give the opportunity, it just becomes, oh, well, I'll go play golf today with Dad and whatever. But that was you're not allowed to play golf. So screw you. I'm going to do it. You can't stop me playing, and there's something about that's actually fuel. It's actually one of those opposites in life, right? It's like swing it left for the ball to go right. Well, take the golf away for the kid and he's going to want to do it more. It wouldn't work all the time, but it's fascinating because nobody wanted it more than Seve when he was playing. I mean, that's why he was so appealing to watch, right? Because he was just, no one's been that into golf while they were playing it. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and that'll add a little friction to the Sandbelt Invitational, right? You have all these competitively starved players, and it's like, wow, we're back out here again, and I've got a pencil in my back pocket, and this is serious. I mean,
yeah, these are people, because this is the point. I mean, when we all do it, but you go to everyone's arguably, if they haven't had anything to play, they've just been practicing for 2 years. So they think they're playing well, But as everybody knows, when you come off the range hitting it well, that doesn't usually translate to any sort of consistent, predictable pattern when you get on the golf course. It's completely different when you put a scorecard in your pocket. So it'll be interesting with these kids. I mean, they've probably played a handful of tournaments in the last 2 years, but there's a handful in 2 years. There's not very many. It's a different story when the gun goes off. So it'll be really interesting to see where the level is at, where everyone's heads are at, and do everyone's heads fly off and get angry, or do they just oh, well, I shouldn't be playing well anyway, or do people play better? I mean, I think for the older guy, for people that sort of, once you've done this for 20 or so years, or even for a long time, you can take... If I took 2 days off when I was 19, I felt like I lost a month. When Hogan used to say that, he took a day off, he felt like he lost a month or whatever. You could notice that. But now, I don't think it makes any difference. And actually, when I take time off, I feel like I get better, because you've just got so much more golf in your body, over your life.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'm thinking about you Down the Fairway, because that's one of my top 5 favorite books as well. And I wanted to circle back on that because it is such an elegant piece of writing. And as you embark on this kind of new path as a media mogul, and I mean, do you have a book in you, Geoff? Is that something you aspire to?
Maybe. I mean, I've written a fair few like little 800-worders and stuff for some magazines and stuff, and like I think so. I don't know what people. I guess you don't write the book that people want to read. You write the book that you want to write and hope people read it right.
1,000,000%.
I don't know what I want to write about. There's so many different aspects of the game that would be interesting. I mean, I'd like to at some point actually. So we'll see. We'll come up if I get a kernel of inspiration one day. We'll see.
What other ideas are you sitting on? I'm just curious now. Like you've always wanted to do, you haven't had the time or the bandwidth or the editorial support, but so you have all those things now. Like anything that you've been knocking around.
I don't know. One of my favorite things to do is do this sort of thing. Is just talk about golf with people who like the game, and have sort of. I just find that fascinating. Just anything golf, really. I obviously love the architecture side of things. I love I love going to like interesting, cool golf courses. Like the great ones are obviously great to go to. I mean, you get the day you go to Pine Valley, it's just like Christmas Day for a grown up, right? It's just something else, Augusta and Cypress and the old course. I mean, I could spend 2 months in St Andrews and just hang out one summer. I mean, that would be pretty cool too. All that. I love all that stuff. And as I said, the Little Hickory course and par 3 courses and Top Golf, I have a good time. I mean, Top Golf's great fun. It's just all good, right? Yeah. So, I you can't write all of that in a book. Like you got to have an angle. I'll work something out. There'll be something will pique my interest that I'll want to write more than 800 words on.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a big townhouse in St Andrews, and you spending a summer there, and people will pop in, and little daily postcards from. I think that's something we should work on. That would be a delight.
That would be amazing. Tomo, actually, Peter Thompson, sort of Australia's great legend. He used to for about 20 or 30 years there towards the end. He owned a place up there on the right hand side of 18, and he used to live there 6 months a year. Australia 6 months a year, St Andrews 6 months a year. I mean, that guy had it worked out. Fantastic. five opens. Imagine how he just went to take the dog for a walk in the morning, and there's a 5-time Open champion walking across the 18th or something, and you were playing. Can you imagine? Amazing.
Yeah. Just give me a little tip on the tee, like, whatever, old man, keep walking the dog. He's
just keep it down the left tee, you'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. I might know what he's talking about. Yeah, I mean, Ginella and I were just talking about, with the 150th Open celebration and some things that we need to do around that. And I was saying we should go back and do the old course reverse. I did it almost 20 years ago now. On April 1st, they play the old routing, where it was used quite commonly before World War II. And then as the Open became a bigger deal and a TV spectacle, everyone wanted to play the course the way they'd seen it on TV. But yeah, there's a whole different way to do it. You're basically going counterclockwise, and it's utterly fascinating. I thought it was actually a better golf course that way. And if they would, when I wrote a story about it for Sports Illustrated in 2004, but we didn't have a drone, and we didn't have it was I think it was hard for people to picture. So
yeah. I'd love to do that. I've obviously, that if you've read it, if you've sort of taken a bit of a deep dive into the old course, you kind of know that they used to go that way anyway.
Yeah. And
it makes, once you find that out, and you have holes like some of the holes on the back nine, especially holes like 12, it just makes no sense the way we play it. Even though it's an unbelievable hole, it makes no sense. You flip the green around, you come the other way. It's like, oh, I get it now. Well, why wouldn't you have a green like that? So I do. It does have its appeal, but there's something about the trouble being on the right. The old course, if you reverse it, you're looking after everyone's bad shot. You're not punishing it. There's something really scary about the out of bounds being on the right all day for most golfers, weirdly enough. And you can bail it as far left as you want, but your angle gets worse and worse and worse, and you'll find some of those weird bunkers that are random over there somewhere out in the left. But if you want to play the course well, you got to go up the right, and that freaks people out when there's out of bounds on the right. So I don't know, it's just evolved into such a perfect situation, the old course, through no fault of any one person. It just became that way. But yeah, you're right. I'd love to play up the left at the old course. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, I mean, not to be a contrarian or whatever, I actually liked it better reverse. I just thought, as you're saying, some of the hazards made more sense. Some of the angles in the greens were better. And
you can see a lot more of the bunkers.
You do, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And some of the shots were hellacious. Like when you're coming into the first green and, you know, the green is sloping away towards the burn because you're in a totally different direction. Like, damn, that's a hard shot. And some of that stuff was just really fun. So, yeah, well, that's what would be fun about this new adventure you're embarking upon. Just anything you can dream up, you know, it's going to happen. And
that's going to be fun.
So that's going to be fun. All right. Well, this was a fun chat, first of many, I hope. And we, you know, for those who are listening, we are going to be covering the Sandbelt Invitational quite a lot on our social channels. Also, firepitcollective.com. I'll be writing daily. I was trying to get down to Melbourne because of quarantines and COVID and all that. It just didn't happen. But still going to be trying to cover it extensively from here in the U.S. with the help of Geoff and other people on the ground. And so there'll be a lot of that stuff coming your way as well, beyond just this podcast and the accompanying story. So anyway, best of luck, Commish. What's your title? What do we call you?
Oh, come to the tournament, all the titles have gone to other people. I'm just a golfer now.
Okay. All right. Well, it's gonna be fun to see you team up again. So anyway, welcome to the collective, and great luck in the Invitational, and we'll do this again soon. Thank you, Geoff.
Sounds good. Good chat.